Karen for me. Crazy cartoon. No, that's you, guy, and you're the Karen. Just turn her off.
Thank you.
The only guy. Karen, student.
Mr. Chairman, bye.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks very much for coming this evening. We'll call the meeting to order, and we will say that we have a quorum, and we have no visitors this evening. Is there anyone here that would make would like to make a declaration of conflict of interest at this point before we go any further in the meeting? I've heard none. You've all had to look at the agenda. If all agree the agenda is okay the way it's presented, I can have someone move to be adopted.
Adoption.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, thanks for you. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. You've all looked at the minutes of the board meeting, June 9, 2023. If there are no questions or comments on those minutes, if I get someone with those minutes be adopted as presented. Thank you, seconder.
I'll second.
Almost did. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Thank you.
We'll move on to business arising previous minutes. First is the draft strategic plan, and I'm going to leave that with Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I have Gia here online as well, in case there's questions. But I sent this out as a link because it's a 93-page document. I'm sure you'll study it as I sent it out and know the wording's on it. But it's well laid out. There's a lot of background information. The key points or the key things I think that you probably should look at are actually appendices. So when we talk about all the background information, how we got where we are, how we arrived at the priorities and the actions, and what that's the bulk of the part of the document. But in the appendices, you will find, for instance, this is the actual plan part. So this would be the economic development. So it's got your priorities and goals, actions and stakeholders, and approximate date for any duties for to get them done by, performance targets. So this is the more detailed part of the plan, and you can find those in the appendix. I don't know if anybody has any questions about it. And like I said, Ed is here too. He did a lot of the assembly. Yeah, so I'm going to leave it there. We discussed about it.
I'll make a motion that we accept the draft strategic plan.
Okay. Are you seconded? Any comments before we go to the vote?
I have a couple of comments, and I'm going to apologize because I'm getting some feedback, and I don't know if it's just me or if it's the audio there. I see
Brad,
that.
they affirm as well. So.
Okay, so if this cuts in and out, I apologize. So hopefully the message gets through. There's a couple things that I think we should talk about. One, there was a suggestion back when we talked about this in June to maybe not adopt it for the full 5 years, but to adopt it for, I think, a single year. I think that's what some of the other RSCs have done to give us a chance to go back and look at it so that we're not locked in over a 5-year term, which I would be much more comfortable with given the newness of this topic and the newness of the strategic plan. There's a couple of other things in there that I think we should have some conversation around. Mostly, I think it's a great plan. I think it's a very ambitious plan, but I'm just worried if it is the right size for the size of this region. I'm thinking particularly about what some of the goals are for the region, and if we're putting enough focus on the things that we need to be putting focus on. I'm thinking particularly on the tourism and the economic development strategy piece. For Graham and Ann, it doesn't matter what we do on either one of those in particular. If we don't address the housing situation, there's no sense looking at the workforce. There's no sense in adopting a tourism strategy, because we can't expand our tourism industry if we don't have people to work in the restaurants, and they can't work in restaurants because they don't have a place to live. And so when we start talking about we're hiring people, we've got a director of this and a director of that, I would much rather strategically look at the housing situation and then go back and look at some of the other indicators that are out there. And I would like to have some more conversation around those things and about where our priorities are in the plan. And this is a bit of a minor thing, but I'm also not completely comfortable with each of those topics when we've identified particular positions within the RSC to be responsible for them. I think that we need to have a conversation about how we develop, how we deliver on those plans. So that was a little bit rambling, but those are just some thoughts. I finally sat down and read the action plan over the weekend, so that was sort of where I am. So I'm not sure if I'm out there on a limb by myself or what the other feelings were, but those are my comments.
I'm willing to amend the motion that we accept the draft strategic plan and add for 1 year.
Mr. Chair, if I can add, and maybe I should have expanded on this, but as we pass some discussions, this is a living document, and the motion should, I believe myself, include a review of this at least annually. To see where it is and see if it needs to have adjustments. So if you want to word it that way.
Yep, I just added that amended for 1 year.
Is
that sorry? That's secondary.
No, that's fine. I thought that's what we were doing anyway. Sorry, we talked about it last time for a year, so I just figured that's what. Yeah.
It's good to have it in.
So that was a good point, Bonnie. The other one on housing, you're very correct. That housing is a priority that I guess it really blends into everything else that we're trying to accomplish as far as economic development, tourism, and you've specified those two and the other things as well. The housing portion of it, we've already started. There was trying to remember, there was a nonprofit developer that had come in here and spoken to us about the potential for doing that. I think from that perspective, we can still try as an RSC to try and bring in developers. I know in McAdam, I've been reaching out to some developers to start one project here, like just one building and one building here to see how it goes. St. Andrew, Brad, I see you got your hand up. St. Andrew's taking a little bit of a different approach in, for example, the hotel and turning that into housing. But housing is very important. I'll turn it over to Brad just for a minute. You go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I kind of concur with what Mayor Morse was saying. I know this is a living document. I think that was really important. So we know that this isn't necessarily the be all end all. If it comes to things like hiring new positions, I really would like, obviously, for it to come back to the board just to make sure that we want to continue to invest in things like that, even though it might be part of the strategy. But I think there's a lot of things that still, and no fault of anyone, it was such a short time frame that we really don't know. And I feel pretty good about tourism when we get the specific mandated services, just because I really don't feel like the region has been truly working together over the last little while. So I feel like that's nothing but an opportunity, but I'm a little bit concerned over economic development from a staffing perspective, because, like Mayor Morse indicated, housing is such an important file, but the amount, the magnitude and the size of that file that Charlene is going to have to manage it's going to be overwhelming, to be completely honest, for any one individual for a complete region. When you've got housing, job creation, dealing with other levels of government, that's, to me, a whole agency is what it would normally be. So I'm a little concerned that if a business on the street was to reach out to the Regional Service Commission, that we're not going to have probably the capabilities from a staffing perspective to be able to help them with their business. So, and the strategy doesn't really identify how we're going to really do that, right? How we're going to make up for the manpower. So, Hollis, you could probably update a little more. I know I'm going sidetrack, but like right now, I think Synergy is at risk, and Synergy is such a crucial player within Eastern Charlotte from a municipal standpoint. So I almost see the Regional Service Commission leading from a regional perspective, but who works within the municipalities to really help businesses. And I think that might be a gap, and we don't have to decide that today, but I really think we should bring Synergy back to the table as an RSC board. They've expressed to us that they want to have a regional lens and they want to work with municipalities all across the region. I think we should hear them out on what that really could look like. And I know that there's only limited funds right now, but just for maybe if there's a way the budget could make it work where, again, I'm hearing that they might be in trouble because of all this, that maybe we could give them a year as well to have funding so they could start building regional relationships across all of our communities to see what they actually can do to support us on a more local level and support Charlotte. So I think there's some big conversations that this plan's not going to make abundantly clear. So it's really hard to accept this, but out of respect for anyone that puts this together, it was almost an impossible task, to be completely honest with you. It just, there's so many conversations and so many unknowns that it's anyway, I know I'm kind of babbling now, but I just agree with Mayor Morris. It's really hard to see this long term. I think the proof is when I talk to people on the street, my counselors, is in 1 year's time, they're going to look at all these plans and say, what did they really mean? That's what it comes down to. And to approve it for 5 years, it's hard to approve something 5 years because you actually don't know what the results are going to be for ultimately the taxpayer.
I might be able to bring a little clarity to specific. That's what I had a good conversation last week with Glenn Hawkins. We were talking about where things, and I've been back and forth with Andrea as well in the last week actually. A lot of this, so clarity was between, and they're going to hit the nail on the difference to local and do local regionally and do regional economic development. So regional economic development being reset and the local economic development where stuff really happens on the ground should happen. And that's what Glenn and I were talking about. And seems like, I don't want to put words in his mouth or speak for City because I'm not that person. It seems like they're really kind of focusing on that space, which is awesome because that's where there's a need there. Stephen does it with Future St. Stephen and municipalities are different. Message to everybody was that it's difficult for us to fund regional or local economic development regional scale. Reason being, I have certain parameters that I can collect me through. 50% population, 50% tax, and then it has to be done the entire region, everybody or nobody, and then first the exact same way. But every local government is in a different place. So we've got Fundy Shores, seemingly large tax base, but not a lot of infrastructure. And we've got Eastern Charlotte next door, lots of different infrastructure from amalgamating a couple of different local governments. And then we have, there's just everybody's in a different place in where they are. So therefore they have different needs. It's difficult for, like, my hands are tied when it comes to what I can present for funding options. But organizations like Synergy are not tied to that same formula. So that's where they have an advantage and could provide, specialized services for, say, Eastern Charlotte, Fundy Shores, and whoever else they, end up with. They seem like they're building some pretty good plans for succession in the future. My understanding is they have funding to the end of this year, so they're trying to figure out what that funding looks like in 2024, and I think they'll be successful with that. I mean, that's entirely up to them. But anyway, it was a good conversation back and forth. And they're certainly partners at the table with us, and we're there to support them. But financially, we can't do it. I just don't have the money. Unless, and if I did, I could build it into, I could build a bigger economic development budget, but how I collect and how I disperse it is a problem. So therefore, it would be better. And also, we would also have to take our administration out of that, which doesn't make any sense. Why would, why would we do that?
Yeah.
So I'd rather see them provide customized solutions that are actually going to work properly for the local governments that they serve. And be the right size for that kind of an application. And we're there along the way to sorry, police car pull in and it's but anyway, so that position is happening. Now I'm just going to be completely transparent here. There's a lot of back and forth between WNB and MLA Anderson Mason, myself in the last week too, because seems like there's some things happening that and I said, look, I don't want to get in the middle of any of that. This isn't really any of my business. So
one of the issues that we've been trying to deal with here ever since this economic development portion came down is that there seems to be a lack of understanding as to how the three silos are working: the provincial, the regional, and the municipal level, or the local level. I better not say municipal, or I'll get in trouble here with Jim. But at the local level, and we've tried to figure out how we were going to do that, and that has not been completely finalized. I know I had as well been talking to Glenn about how Adam could engage with energy. And for one, their website, we suggested that we would help fund that website on a regional level. That when somebody, an industry or a business wants to set up in a region, they can go to the one website, and our communities are all like the information about our community can be found there. And I struggled with this ever since we came out. And on the one hand, we want to try and get the region working together on economic development. And I'll explain a little further this misunderstanding. I was at one meeting just after, it was just in the new year when we started talking about this, and someone mentioned to us, well, you're not going to tell my community from the regional level how I'm doing my business. And that was never the intent, that we get that deep into the weeds. That you, as a community, Grand Manan, you could have a ship come in or not. That's totally up to you. As a matter, if it was me, I'd want to work with you so I can get into St. Andrews, or just that street from St. Andrew, a port that we can get into, because the entire region benefits from an economic development like that. And so that's where we need to drive it. We need to drive it from the local level. I think energy is a great starting spot for that. And I've always leaned in that direction, but it's how you make it work. We haven't defined that relationship between that local level and the regional level, not to my satisfaction anyway, and clearly not to the satisfaction of this group. So that's one of the things, once we agree to this strategic plan, is we now need to go back into that strategic plan and figure out how we're going to meld that community level economic development in the regional level, and also bring the provincial level. What I'd really like to see is like to have an amalgamation of OB come down and talk to a region, and the municipality come up, such as a Synergy or a future St. Stephen, or the representatives of the other communities, and they come up, and the three of them sit down. And so ONB may have an option that we're not aware of, that we might be able to fill in our region. We may have at the local level an injury that we want to set up in our community, but ONB no knowledge of. And so if we can get 3 levels of talk together, 3 levels of economic development, I shouldn't say government, the 3 levels of economic development, if we can get those talking together, be stronger together. But we haven't figured out how we're going to get those connections yet. So that's going to follow on from this. Certainly with respect to synergy, I firmly believe that they're doing a great job and that we need to sort out how they get funded. Certainly from our perspective at the regional level, if PEDAL is still available, then we as a region can put leverage on them to supply for another year, potentially funding to keep synergy going, so that we can then another year try and figure out how we're going to blend those guys in with the region. So those are you guys are all saying the same thing, and I agree 100% with you. So I guess what I'd like to say is that let's pass this strategic plan with the full understanding that we are not finished with this document in any way, shape, or form. And the very things that you guys are bringing up are the same issues that have and the other members around the board table. And we need to an emphasis on that going into the future. We can make that work for the region. I guess comments.
I agree with you, synergy. And being the mayor of Eastern Charlotte, I had to be the one to speak up for them as well. And you couldn't ask for a better to be working for us, because they're there all the time. If there's an issue or something happening, they're there. Make one phone call and things are happening, making sure that somebody's on top of it. We don't have it in place in our municipal government, and synergy therefore we need that in place in order for us to grow and look for opportunities out there. And I guess Glenn Hawkins is doing a great job.
Yeah, that group, I've talked to them several times, and they have a lot of good ideas on the ball. And the way I kind of look at it is, whatever benefits them will benefit the rest of the region. Whatever benefits Stephen is going to benefit the rest of the region. Whatever benefits McAdam, we are a region. And when people are hiring in St. Stephen, people from McAdam go to Stephen to go to work. And when I'm hiring in McAdam, people are coming from St. Stephen to us. And so we need to, we all realize that around this table, that we are a region and we need to work together to get this economic development. One of the key aspects of economic development, but you hit it right on the head, is housing. We need to make sure that the government understands that we are committed to the housing. And one of the things, I know you guys all know this, but anybody that's watching, RSC 10 has, the planning department has been instrumental in trying to access additional funding for housing and the development of the structure that goes along with that. So that is actually going into the just the federal government funding, and that's. Oh, I was just signing my documentation on that last night, so the rest of you should be signing documentation on that very shortly. But for RC10, we were one of the few regions that went ahead, had the region send in an application for every one of the communities around this board. And so that really put on a first step footing into that pool of money so that we can gain access to it. And it'll be quite beneficial to us. Now,
so on that topic, the other stuff, I mean, I missed start of your conversation, but the struggles with the municipalities and see is the lines are blurred between us. Like we don't know what part of economic development is just so all out there. I think everyone's trying to mold it the way they want it, but we need to. I like to have a solid line between what the municipality has to say and what their RSC plan. And that's that goes for some of the other things too, for public safety. Like those, I think we really need to work on that because our council and town is confused on as well.
I think.
Or we.
I think that by going through this document, you will find Well, that is, at least the frame is there. So as a starting point to work on that, this will be the document.
Any of that line is solid, doesn't mean that can't be neither, as time progresses too, you may find this might better that one takes that role or whatever, but you need something to get a point of.
Yeah, something to work from. We need a baseline. And then once that baseline is agreed to, then we can manipulate it from there into what we really want to look. Sorry.
No, that's all right. I just didn't want to.
You should have been tapping.
Okay. So I guess I echo what everybody's saying. I agree. But having a deeper look at it and having the chance, I guess, the extra little time to go through it. I don't feel confident or comfortable tonight for me, and I'm always on me, in adopting a plan that I feel there was no significant changes from the table other than the appendices that were placed in. And in echoing what Bonnie and Brett said, I have a lot of concern in adopting something as a plan, even though we're saying it's a working document. I think we had this discussion the last time, but it wasn't really a strategic plan. It was with the bylaws, and I was really happy, as I said tonight, you know, to see the work that went into the bylaws since then. There was a lot put in, and I appreciate that. But my fear is adopting or voting something and adopting it, and with the changes being the potential of budgeting or staff being needed, and there's no solid numbers in this plan as of yet or right now, that how will that work if it comes back to the board? It's still going to come back to a vote. So it's still going to be a budgeting thing or a monetary thing that's going to affect the board, and that's going to affect the document. And that worries me without having something in there right now saying, here's X amount of dollars I'm going to put for this. And then we can vote to lower it. I don't know. But for me, and only for me, I don't feel comfortable in adopting a plan that has nothing solid in it. With these, again, I could go through my whole page and a half that I together, and a lot of it was typographical and grammar, you know, errors and all kinds of stuff that I found wrong. But the two key things were what Bonnie and Brad has stated, and go deeper into that. I guess it's the budgeting that worries me.
So
That
the,
would be mine.
so the budgeting aspect, I'm going to turn over to you. There's a set budget in there, and the budget is approved by, anyway, I'm going to give it to the expert to speak to, because I can certainly add to it.
Well, I need, respectfully, Mr. Chair, I need the plan in order to actually make the budget, right? So, and you're right, it would have been nice to have had a lot more time to develop that, but I don't. And it's also a bit of a target. I mean, I've only recently discovered more money as an input into what we're doing from different pots. What I can say is, and I'm going to get into some budget items here under new business, but what I can say is that the bills that you currently get from Regional Service Commission on a quarterly basis for all the services are going to be significantly less next year because of all of the inputs that we now have. I mean, significantly less. And that is mostly due to all of the new services. There's not going to be a lot of monetary input for the new services once we get through the Regional Services Support Fund. When I get the inputs from Working in B, when the inputs from Tourism Heritage Culture, get our inputs from ESIC, all stackable, all these are stacked. There was another one that I found just like today that I was made aware of, I should say, yesterday. Yeah, so there's, once we through that comes to the new services, as far as new services goes, they're not going to ask for exchange, and that's because we purposely left the light and we allude to what saying, but how are we going to do these things? Set out in the planted tasks and things that we achieve. I'm from believing staff that currently have plus a couple more resources that are in need for support for these, which would be in that. Woodward is laid out in line for us, for our services. It's not going to cover local economic development, and nor should it, because that is the regional service company. It's not going to cover the potential LNB part. We're not even allowed to go there with legislation for economic development. Everything else is, I mean, I'm dealing with a lot of different government departments that may not be aware of what the other one is doing or where that's coming from. And so we're right now just putting together all of the inputs and things like that. But I get that right now, from what I know right now, it's going to be significantly less of a bill from the Service Commission to local governments now for all of these services. I don't know if that helps or not.
But there's talk of additional grants being lowered though.
I don't even know the detail on that, but that's what I understand.
That's what he alluded to last time.
This is what I am, but I don't want to speak authoritatively on that because that's against me.
You can also make it happen. Talk about it to make it happen.
Go ahead.
So I personally feel comfortable. Well, first of all, I want to say I apologize for being late. I didn't know I was late. I thought this is 6 o'clock meeting. I thought, geez, these guys started early without me. Anyway, sorry. So I apologize for being. I do see it now. It says 5:30. But again, like even if we voted on this budget or this topic tonight, we could vote against it tomorrow and take it out of there, like as a board. So it's not. It's, even that part's fluid.
Well, 3 months actually.
Yeah, but I mean, the option's always there. Well, the option, no, there's always an option to pull something out
Well, you can always
as a board. Yeah, that's the option's always there, so you're still covered that way too. But again, the time I get the time when they had to get that together.
Yeah. And I think actually, it's okay, Mr. Chair. I think Mayor McEachern is alluding to a really point. This is you guys, right? So
Exactly.
This is your plan, and you are the ones that govern this organization. So you're exactly right. However, I need a plan adopted so that I can tap into the 311,000 and then some of the other funding. So, but we can change it whenever you want. We can revisit this quarterly. We can revisit. In fact, my recommendation would be that quarterly we have a look at what their plan, the action items are, where we are with all of those. Just so you have the update, you have the information, you're armed with the proper information to make any decisions going forward. And I don't mind making that happen. Quarterly, a report, and then annually a revisit to make any changes you want to make. That would be my recommendation.
How's everybody feel about that? We do a review quarterly on the document. You will, the budget process begins in August, and then those when do we finalize that budget in the October, November? Is it September?
Yeah, we put it out for review at the end, like the motion that I would hope to get from the board at the end of August is to take the budget that we have and put it out for review. There's a 45-day requirement for review. And then the board votes on it at usually our October meeting.
Okay. So hopefully that will help you with your, on the financial side. No monies are spent without the board's approval at the budget within the process. So you shouldn't have any trouble with the budget from that perspective. You'll know where the money is and how much is being spent. And I hope that allays some of your fears, Denny. I found over years from sitting on the board, that budgetary process works quite well in trying to figure out where the money's going and who's authorizing what. And it's the board that finally makes the final decision on that budget process. So, and I don't know whether some of your fears are coming from the perspective of we're going to start raising rates on something to pay for something. That is not the intent at this point, because when we took on these additional responsibilities, we said, we actually had it so that we weren't spending any money on it. But all the other RSCs had spent a certain set amount. And so we were looked at upon to say, maybe we should put a little money towards them just to make sure we have money that's going to cover the planning prospects and all those things that we've now gone through. I won't say it, but to help pay for Jihad and the staff work that he's done in all of this. So from that perspective, I'm quite confident that the board can deal with the financial side of things. We've had great success through the last 7 years that we've been doing this. And I know there's a lot of, I'm going to leave it at that because it's we've had a pretty positive experience with it. Al?
So would there be any substantial investment after we approve this? So okay. So it's not like you're gonna invest in hiring 10, I'm just exaggerating, 10 people and get them on the payroll and all of a sudden get a deal with that. There's nothing like that.
No.
Okay.
But I guess that's my uncertainty is, I guess we can say no, but I mean, if there's nothing in the plan that says that we need, the same as, I guess Brad and Bonnie have stated that with even economic development or whatever, creation, whatever the case may be, if more funding or more staff is needed, we don't know until it comes back to the board and then, yeah.
But when it comes to the board, you have the opportunity to say no. We're not going to support because we don't believe the money's there.
Right.
And especially if it's going to come back to our municipalities and say we need another 2% or 2 cents on the 100 to pay for these other individuals. Well, no, we'll probably come back from the board and say you need to cut back on what you're trying to accomplish in the coming year. So I think that we're okay on that from that perspective. Yeah, Brad, I see your thumbs up.
Do I amend that motion again? For a
So-
period of 1 year with quarterly review?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll make that amendment.
Can you,
Already seconded.
So just a second.
can you restate the motion
Yeah,
so that
yeah.
Megan gets?
Yeah.
I move that we adopt the strategic plan for a period of 1 year with quarterly reviews.
Harvey, yeah, Harvey had already seconded, so I'm gonna go back to him. Okay, I'm not trying to ram this through, but with this vote, I just want you to know that there's a lot of flexibility in this, but I would like to have all those in favor say aye. Okay. All those opposed, nay?
Yeah.
Okay,
One vote?
one nay, yep, Danny. Okay,
Just, Mr. Chair, just
Yeah.
clarification on this. Was this a straight up vote or is this we did vote
Simple
a
majority.
simple majority vote? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
and
Just before we move on, we'll follow up with synergy for some conversations, just because end of year is not that far away by any means, right, for them.
yeah, that was gonna be the next thing I was gonna mention, Brad. I would like to have something, suppose a meeting around the first week in September so that we can, I would like to have the economic committee and any of the mayors or representatives that wish to be there, plus synergy, plus our own economic development folks, so that we can sit down and talk about how we want to approach economic development from a regional perspective, not just at the regional level and at the community level.
Future St. Stephen too.
Future statement as well, please. Yes, absolutely. Like they are a member of the economic committee. I'm sure they are.
Well, Alan's there.
Yeah.
Sure, I know he was at the meeting.
Yeah.
Another guy. Can't remember.
And Ian was there. Or-
Yeah.
Yeah, he was online.
Ian was there. Yeah.
Glenn's a member of the committee.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
Yep.
So I think if we have the economic committee together and any of the synergy board members or anybody else that really wants to come and has a role to play.
Yeah, so to add that, I mean, I think, again, when I talk about that line in the sand there, Before we have that meeting, we gotta get that there, because I know what that meeting's gonna be like if you have all those groups there, all that talking starts, and they start trying to build something that maybe is not supposed to be built. I wanna get that part secure before we open up that floor, because just what I experienced in our last meeting in St. George, we gotta.
Can we bring that up for discussion at our next working session? Sure. And we'll have, yeah. So we'll have this board, we'll have a couple of other people there.
Yep, no, I'll make it.
Yeah, I mean, unless that meeting would help us build that, I don't know, but it would be like to be a little more clear if we're getting that meeting, I think.
Yeah, like what I'd like to do is, I'm like you, Alan, I think we need to have a conceptual of what we're thinking it's gonna look like, and then a baseline from which everybody can then expand the knowledge or the expertise on that. Rather than just going in and saying, let's slap something up on a board and figure out what's gonna go. So I think I like that idea better. Let's straw man first, and then we'll use that as our baseline to build around.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Okay. The next one is the bylaws update, and that's Hollis again.
So I didn't have copies printed this time for everybody. If you vote to adopt them, that's available, a printed copy if you like. I sent that out on Tuesday, the time we got done with it. We had some late additions and some really good suggestions and some really good input, and I feel like it cleaned up the bylaws that last version. And some good clarification around it. So I'm just going to leave it there, and you can make a motion to adopt. You can wait another month if you want. I mean, it's up to you, but.
Well, I was listening to Andy a little earlier, and he thought it looked pretty good. So, and he's our expert on this one.
I did send, I apologize, I did send a lot through, and I know Jim sent some too, so anyway, you know, it was good, and you did a great job doing, I appreciate that.
And Jim, what for your comments on it?
I think they did a very good of cleaning up the bylaws. I noticed there was a lot of renumbering and there was must be a considerable amount of that was removed. So, just by the fact that number happened a lot sooner than they did in the old versions. Anyway, very pleased to see with what's in there. The only thing, like question I have is that it talks about committees, but the old bylaws used to contain requirements for how many members had to be on a committee and how often committees had to reach the board. Those are the only things that I didn't see in there in this writing. Everything else pretty well falls in line with what's good procedural bylaws.
Okay.
Not expert eye of these two, so I first thank you guys for expert eye. I was in your work on it. But it brought my attention, you saw the changes, but when you look at it, they were literally like, did you show you, did they draft or they strike them or?
It was
nothing?
redone.
Yeah.
Things that were
But I
missing
like-
in one and then.
Because
yeah.
and what came from the consultant. I realized when I did it, I was basically duplicate.
Right.
So what was taken out was just duplicate.
Yeah, I was just, my preference is always is that I like stuff getting taken out, but I see it striked out. And then so we see it removed, you know what I mean? So it just doesn't disappear, so you don't not see it. Done the way we do things in the past. I don't know here, but you just see it like, but it's just a line through it that's been removed, and then you get the clean cut after. Just so you can say, oh, okay, they took this out.
Would make it easier, because
Yeah.
all we did is I just took both documents and on both
Yeah.
screens and just had to go line by line.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Oh, that works too, but I just,
Well, no, I agree.
no, it just makes it just.
Through it.
Next time we all bylaws, please, right now.
Definitely not that great. Just new ones maybe.
But it still has the feature that every time that something comes up, in the bylaws that you feel should dusted, then it's put on a list, and at the end of the year, there is a committee to be, which will look at all of those items, review the bylaws for that year. That's still there.
The only thing I would like to call everybody's attention to, and this is one of the, well, one of the reasons because we need to fix the format a bit, but also in the appendix, or I think it is, remuneration. So that shows remuneration for board members and committee members, and also PrAC members. And it was brought to my attention that the PrAC hadn't been updated. My feeling is that PrAC members should be compensated the same rate as board members because they are public facing committee. It's extremely difficult work, sometimes really controversial and uncomfortable. Most of them, actually, you're right. And they are a decision-making board, which has been taken to task, people's board with that. In the past, I think their compensation stood somewhere between me and board. But,
So do you want a motion for that?
no, it would be, if you would bylaws.
It's in there. Yeah, that's what I thought it was in there, yeah.
Or the motion to bylaws could be with that change, if you want.
The only change I mean, I'm comfortable with it. The only change we were to make it for 3-day notice that I had, I guess I didn't highlight it in my notes, but the 3-day notice of documents for members.
Yep.
That if that could have been expanded on or extended or just a little, I guess. Lengthier time to get them, like, you know, we improve instead of 3 days just because of everything we got going on. It's.
I think the way it's worded is that's the minimum, like.
Yeah.
you get it.
That's the, generally speaking, that of all, because they usually end up with stuff Friday.
So Monday or Tuesday for a Thursday board meeting, is that?
Monday is,
It should be,
Monday.
Monday should be the day for Thursday.
Yeah, right, okay, I'm good.
if I can get them over, and I used to get them over. Back before we were, had a list. And get them on Friday, I will do, but you haven't seen that yet, just because.
So Monday would be, yeah, the minute, yeah. No, I just didn't highlight it, but I don't know.
Good.
Yeah.
Any comments? Brad or Bonnie, do you have anything else?
Do we need a motion?
I think we probably need a motion.
I would make a motion that the board adopt the tentative bylaws that have been sent to us as being the formal bylaws for our board meetings for Regional Service Commission.
Seconder? Harvey? Seconder? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, motion passed. Are you here, Rhonda, for the rest of the meeting? Would you like to speak, and then we can let you go?
No, I just to be here.
Okay. Because I have something I'll bring up with you before you.
I'm trying to just help yourself to just anything.
Yeah, there's sandwiches there, Paul, anything you want. Rhonda. Okay. Okay, we'll move under new business budget items for 2024. And that's Hollis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to bring up a few things that I'm probably going to want to include in the budget for 2024. Most of the budget for 24 isn't going to actually be very much different than this year's or any other year. Really, it's mostly business as usual in all the services except for all the meetings. I haven't gone through the number yet, but we might be facing small fee increase. It won't be a huge shudder of my hope for some teams. I'm sure yet. That's good because of also the business that we've had. But there's a couple of things that I want you, and I don't want.
Sorry, go ahead. I have a question there, but don't still have some there. Getting take out of the pot, with the rate down to that, not.
We absolutely do.
If you use, right?
No,
Oh.
we absolutely have. In
Okay.
fact, so we actually $950,000
Right.
surplus going into 2024 for solid waste.
Okay.
So I'm gonna have to touch Timothy, not until I get there.
Okay.
A warning shot, well,
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, but maybe deduct it.
yeah, maybe, good job.
there are a couple things. So this year, weather-wise, we started almost behind on water at the landfill. Because it was wind, it was rain and everything. We started with, ponds that had a lot of water already. Anyway, we emptied the pond at the end of, or the beginning of winter, things freeze up. And then as things thaw in the spring, we start to fill, then we can get through going, the bacteria starts going, it needs to be warm enough. I think we started from behind, it was touch and go in the spots. And that's just the fact, the system was well designed, but I'm not sure it was designed with climate change in mind. And the fact that the weathers have changed. And of course, I'm watching Halifax last weekend, disaster down there. So one of the things I would add into the budget for 2024 is to hire engineering consultant to test our tree system, who does in fact, years, actually before I was last time they did it. And the result of it was the expansion of it, that we got the gas tank for the big expansion. So I would like to do that again to make sure that we've got what we need. I think it's the responsible thing to do, to look at, in light of our current settings, in light of our climate, the areas, the landfill obviously changes all the time and grows, don't get just to make sure that we have everything we need in place before disaster strikes, and to say that we've done our due diligence. So I'd like to add in that to the 24 budget.
Any input on that?
Oh, no, you're gonna say.
I was gonna say, what, we have a suggested estimate, what did the last cost us when we did it?
Normally something like that would be about 50,000. I'm assuming the consultant fees have gone up.
Probably, that's all you're asking me, but that's not that.
Yeah, you go ahead.
If it's regarding climate change, I'm sure there's funding in it that we could go after.
We're not afraid,
Yeah,
we'll be chasing those opportunities.
That's what we
It's
should.
still included in the budget, but yeah, I'll get definitely after that. The thing is, our land in operation is very close to what they have in Northwest in Evanston, but Evanston still freezes up in the winter. We don't as much. It's the difference. So anyway, I talked about this with Mike Young. He's in full agreement. He's like, no, we should have an outside opinion on this, and get that done so that we can leverage that for more funding if we need to put more infrastructure. Process improvement, I want to make sure that we maintain in the budget coming up. We've always maintained a little bit. Some years was a little more, sometimes a little less. I don't know what the number is going to look like. It's not a huge number. I want that that's there.
Okay, I'm gonna ask a question. Process improvement, what specifically are you looking at there? Some coming in and taking a look at the operation and okay, you can cut here, you can't cut there, and there.
Possibly, but sometimes it's not a process of improvement that we've identified anyway. So it could be staff member says, look, if we made these changes here, we're going to save, and that's happened. So to be a good example was our facility manager looked at the big door that we had on the reception and he said, look,
Yes.
can we put in a big curtain here so we stop all the heat escaping? That's great. That's perfect. That's process improvement. And it saves us a lot of money. Things like that.
So in the end, situation or investigation.
Yep. So the other thing in solid waste is the change to recycling. So with the just that are coming next May, we are no longer going to be responsible for trucking our rail to stock like we do now. That will save us $130,000 and $50,000. In 24, that only start May 1st, translate to probably $90,000 for the year that we're going to save.
Increase that cushion, I just thought.
Yeah. It's not all bad.
Oh, no.
Had to meet certain materials the other day.
Yes.
And what we want to do is our facility as the extra station, we should try to Woodstock. But in order to use our located base. And I said, we're back and forth on what that actually means. But it's got to be cost. It just can't actually cost us money for you guys. So that they are theoretically in that. So more to come on that. We'll see where that goes. And then the input that we may have from this that up to them about is our recyclers that we have now. We own the Regional Service Commission owns all of those.
On that, really quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are we?
Yes.
You opposed conversation. Unless
Yeah, no, it's okay. Yeah.
they think it is because you're initiating.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough. So other budget items for 24 in planning. We have a personnel change. It's not gonna happen within the next week. But we're gonna rearrange a little bit about how the jobs work here and the support roles that we have planning. We are ramping up a lot in law enforcement and data on site. We stopped to need a little more support. So I'm going to rearrange some duties.
He found some more.
Shouldn't be any changes in actual cost. Right now we're in stress position. Because I can apply for can't program names. Those were some of the things that we had to budget for at the time. So we are in a certain position right now. Community services, which is what I mean by review services. There's probably one or two additional sources will be there, but as said, we're still going to have significant low bills because of all the inputs that we identified now. Resiliency. So yeah, regional resiliency identified one priority being a record for the region. So this is a and we've talked about more. This is having a team that does all the research on where all the grants are, federal, official, and otherwise, both for NGOs and local governments. And then can make those applications, which is our process anyway. Behalf of the NGOs and the so they've committed the resiliency a certain amount of money, and I feel like we should match that. It'd be around 25,000. Would be our commitment there.
All it would take is probably one grant, one of the communities,
Oh, you make it.
and you get your money back.
You make it back for sure. So that's there. And then the last thing that I talked about is the regional cooperative fund. So we've had what organizations approach us about it. In the past, the policy at Regional Service Commission was the answer is no. And I'm okay if that's the policy that continues, but we need to actually maybe restate that if that's the case. But if we are going to entertain requests for funding for regional type organizations that don't neatly fit into anything else. So, there's a couple of organizations that aren't going to fit those things, but they are great benefit to the entire region. If we're going to entertain supporting these as a region, rather than, because these are the organizations who come to each local government council and ask funding. So if they're going to do that anyway, they could just make those single ask here and go through the process of that application. You don't have to fund from your council, it's just funded the one time. We did that once already for conservation rescue this year. But if we are going to do this, and if we are going to entertain some requests for regional funding, we put some money from the pull from.
Question. Is there anything in there now?
No.
Not
There's,
really.
we've been like $20,000, and sometimes the thing that we pull of that fund is if we were going to do a study. A couple of years ago, remember, we were thinking of a policing study, and it was $50, and that's where that would come from. So I would have to fund that by $50,000, and that's where the regional study on, say, policing. So this is nothing I don't, it's something to kind of take away with you and think of. Are we going to put money in this pot? My suggestion would be maybe $100,000 first.
I'm not on your door, but anyway.
No, that doesn't go very far.
No, I know.
And if it isn't spent, it doesn't go away either. It just comes back. It just stays there.
We've done this subject many times over the last 7 years. And the answer is pretty consistently no, that we don't want to get that into that role. I'm against redoing that, and everybody should think on it. We are, so let's take it away and we can think about it now.
So on that, so we go away thinking clearly. Do not groundwork on like what things would be acceptable to fund.
Well,
He's like, we show that if it's, and I'm obviously we're regional, it should be a region. Promote whatever, it should be a region fund. So like, let's say for example is.
Search and rescue then.
Yeah, so it's regionally, if it's, or if it's hospital or like medical related that we all use, please fall in that category. So we just lay it out, so at least we're thinking of what that would be.
there would be specific criteria, the whole application process where you made it to the board. So, and it has to hit a certain score, so it has to hit certain things. It does have to be evidence that it's a regional purpose or a regional organization or regional benefit. There has to be actual evidence, there has to be track record, there has to be a number of things in place before it's going to be considered. And I would bring that criteria to the board for your approval first. In that process.
The other thing to remember here too is this money is coming out of your municipal budgets. This is not coming out of RSC 10 funds. So what would be done is this $100,000, and throwing that number there, would be apportioned to each of the communities based on population and tax base. So each of your communities would have to fess up that portion of funds. And so if we're going to discuss, which I have a problem with, maybe based on 100,000, you could tell each of the communities at the board what that potentially could cost each one, because you're going to be going back to your councils and saying, we're kind of looking at doing this or 10. Do you think you want to put that much money into this kind of a thing?
So what happens when we'll say, if St. George or St. Stephen, someone with a bigger tag, you can afford to do that, one of the smaller people can't, because they're not paid.
No. I'll answer that is we're already percentage based already.
No, but I mean, what if you can, what if?
Oh, I just can't.
We've
add the
got,
extra.
we're getting close to what the max what we pay on now, right? Where I'm at, so I don't.
No,
That's all I'm getting at.
No, I like
Is it so loophole for the rest? Is if somebody like us can't afford that, that's what I. And the other thing is our staff, and I'm assuming a lot of it will fall on. But I mean, or do we have staff and the extra time?
Yep, it's not that arduous, really.
Okay.
Now, once we have a good system in place, it's consistent, and it's a consistent application process.
Of course, I was just thinking you're gonna save us money on the other thing, so we're probably good, but.
No, I didn't get what you're
I
saying,
just-
but no, I see.
You know,
That makes sense.
I wouldn't want it so open there.
Well, you you'll have the most benefit. You have to remember, we may have the bigger tax base, that's where money's gonna come from for regional. For
Whatever.
regional health.
Oh, yeah, I see what
So,
you're saying.
say, for example, we give the Charlotte County Archive, well, that helps everybody, but
Yeah.
most of the money's coming to even in Eastern Charlotte, because we have the bigger tax.
Oh, no, I see what you're saying.
You know,
I just-
Just gonna say, to move the biggest tax base into the RC now is the Eastern Charlotte, and Steve's funding short in Eastern Charlotte, like who is it right now? That pays into the
You guys have three.
Right.
Small, just get more of it in there each man.
That's what we're paying, and
Don't give it
we just had a lot of meetings this morning with.
This is 50/50 population tax. So
It's what, a little different than just.
it's a little different than scratch.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, and some of our councils may not go, they might say, well, we rather make that decision ourselves, but
Well, the only
we
reason
may get that.
I am, because they just look at you, and say, what do you think? Right? We're late a lot of times, and anyway.
I almost, yeah, so just to continue on that, like. There is things that the communities are already funding. You know, certain things like that. But again, we really focus on the regional part of it. And like, I mean, even, I shouldn't, argue, but search and rescue. That may not have to be here. That could be. Municipality giving 1,000 and Campbell giving 1,000, whatever, that go that way and get it all together, because it still can happen.
Yeah.
And we would have to have those systems out here, and then we just. Throw the cup on the table, we just, not literally, but we can do it that way, not even have a budget here, we could. Have our own, well, we already have our own grant fund, so we discussed that we put. $10 for whatever it might have here, I don't know.
I was just really got tired of this. To really region cover my full region, because ground search and rescue, if it's Charlotte County Ground Search and Rescue, it doesn't cover my region.
I can answer that too.
Okay, because I know
We're
we're
not
not
getting
getting
money.
with Grand Bay Westfield. goes
If
down
we did
there
it
for,
for here. So your money's going one way and some this way, right?
Yeah.
So your piece coming here is for.
Okay. No,
the search and
yeah, no, I'm trying to.
No, I get there.
Because we're already getting through this, how we're doing policing now, it's becoming big.
Actually, for a fact, Charlotte County Ground Search and Rescues is your responsibility is now the St. John County.
It goes to
To-
my grandma's.
Where?
My bad.
Okay, that's,
Rescue across the province follows the RF boundaries. So that's RFP 10 covers from a cabin of water to Five Oaks, or you know.
yeah, another,
That's,
okay.
that's.
St. John's the limit, because the problem is St. John's, Charlotte County, and St. John's the limiting, but it's just 5 fathoms. Right, okay, no, it's, I was confused.
Not really, it would be crazy if I was to choose. How long is that gonna stay like that? Like,
Well,
like,
we're
that's
hoping, on a lot of things along Scar Beach already, we're finally to that point, where they're saying no longer receive 10, so we can finally, well, it's still complicated, because
Yeah, you
we're
still
still
got the money.
contracts that are overlapping, still gonna be tied in some of it for a while. But policing is a big one now we're trying to tackle, because two different, and we're getting numbers from up to Pocatello, and we're not getting the numbers from the other side. It's like trying to haul teeth, especially in the last 2 weeks, because they don't want to give us. Because they say, the police will say, well, you belong down here, but you're servicing us, but they don't want to give us, so it's, yeah, it's.
Yeah, that has to.
So-
That's not happening.
Oh, we fully agree. I'd like to just drop, we belong to RSC 10, move all of our stuff here, and then just be done with it, and make line life their lines here.
Where did I hear the sheet? Haven't I heard it somewhere up to 5 years to make these changes? Did I
Yes.
read that somewhere?
No, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
Governance reform isn't finished. It'd be another 4 years after this.
Yes, that's what I thought. There was a timeline given, and they said it was up to that, when I first did this, it was up to 5 years. And now that new discussion, it's up to probably 4 years now. So there is an end in sight, but I feel for you because I know you're going through a lot.
Well, that's our space, right? So we're paying a lot of those services, so it must wash out. We're paying triple the service for some things compared to what we're paying for down this way.
Just imagine if you didn't have that building I just told you about.
Right.
Because that
So
really.
sometimes it's good, it's
Oh, really
helping, but,
good.
well, sometimes it's not helping. It depends on how you,
Oh,
because,
I know.
well,
A lot.
it helps a lot, but it's also we're paying on the other end.
Oh, because of
that
that, yeah.
So,
I get you,
yeah.
yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, did you have anything on the budget items?
No, that was it, Mr. Chair. Just some things I wanted to bring in before we get into some serious budget discussion. Our next meeting.
Yeah.
Because you are the finance.
Yes. All right. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Just a couple of things that go to CEO. Again, that's gonna be you, Wallace.
Yep, this should go quick. I didn't put a lot of work in this one. It's mostly graphs and things like that, but you can see the first, I put some graphs about the weight volumes, and where I did that is the one at the top shows you month over month where we are in waste volume, and you can see that it's obviously lower than previous years, month over month, and that's because of our loss of business from USA. And then the cumulative is a little less. We're still, and you'll see this when we get to the financial report, we're still okay. I just want to make sure everybody's aware, I'm not trying to paint a rosy picture where there isn't one, or I'm not trying to paint a super negative one either. This is just the reality of things. On the page is our planning. I did a couple of different here, so a little bit more detail. Some of the comments are being told for a lot of different reasons. Of course, as I mentioned, alluded to before, days on site leave, business is ramped up. It's spicy. I mean, one of the things we're going to have to do is actually get a body cam. We've had a couple of close, so we're going to do that. They're not very expensive.
They're not going alone, are they?
Hmm?
They're not going alone, no, right, the bears.
You want to go?
They should.
It depends on the situation, depends on if yeah, it depends.
Should have a buddy system.
We don't have budget.
RC won't go along, we shouldn't send our guys.
Well, this isn't usually it's not a big deal, but I mean, once in a while you have.
I mean, your body cam will, like, or whatever, your camera will help. Because it's not just safety, it's things could be said, and it's nice to have another set of ears.
He said she.
And the last page, I talked a little bit about the new website. It's going to be an ever-changing, ever good source of information. It's consolidated a lot of stuff into all their website except for the blog, which I kept separate. The housing data is all there. The vibrant communities information is now consolidated there. Consolidate all of the domain names to resolve to SNBSC.ca because there's a whole lot for everybody to just have SNBSC.ca instead of all the other websites we had. It's doing well, and you see some of the stats right on the first of the track that we get there. It's not insignificant, 2,700 page views a week. And unique, there's total of about 1,800. So that's not insignificant, and that'll probably grow as we continue to increase our communication strategy. The only other thing in my CEO report that I didn't write down, or I didn't put in the report, is that make everybody aware. Next week, I'm going to a transportation meeting I was invited to, and it's Wednesday to Friday. So,
Yeah.
just so you're aware, I'm going to listen.
The provincial one, regional.
Provincial. They're paying for it. So. There's that. That's my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Any more questions, comments? our CEO. Okay. The last one is the financial update.
Okay, so I included the summarized comparative income statement in the package. I kind of really like where this is going, just because we have a small surplus. But it's not a huge, didn't miss the mark on our forecasting too badly. Couple of things that you might have questions around. So you'll see that total rent transfer, right now this is at the end of June, so this should be exactly 50%. Not everything's actually 50% because some stuff is front end loaded, some stuff will go later. As you know, the government transfers you see are a lot higher than 50% of our annual budget. And that actually comes out, if you look at the expense part down in community development, and that's why. You'll see that the community development looks like it's almost maxed budget for the year for expense, but that's because of the government transfers. Other things that caught my eye, tipping fees from members are far less than half of what we forecast, which is interesting. So I'm not getting as much garbage from our residents. Not a bad thing. But so other sources, and that includes USA, we are still over 50% mark there. We're still good there. Everything else is pretty darn close to where it should be for halfway through the year. Like I said, we're working at a small surplus now.
I made this before, and I can't remember the tipping fees for the American, that's more than what they are though, right? So, okay.
Yep.
Well, I told me that, and with what we're going through, I was trying to, you mentioned Marion, and I think when we talked with you had the other day, I thought you told me, but
Everything still holds with us. We cost one USA customer. But we still get more USA waste than we do from our own residents.
and they pay.
No, it's about the same.
Oh, okay, that's what I thought, that's where I was getting at. I thought you meant they paid.
No, the difference is that we charge US dollars for this time, but it's about.
Can you explain that half, because I might have understood what you meant when you said this.
That's on the local, the domestic. We're down a little bit on our page.
Yeah, so the garbage we get from our residents, if you guys say.
Is half what it usually is.
No,
It's a little,
No, it's just down a little bit.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
just down a little
It
bit.
should be, that number should be half of that number, and it's not quite. but it's-
Oh, okay, that sounds
It should be more
realistic, okay.
it should be 400 or something.
They must have threw a little bit
I'm
more
glad I
back
asked.
to my island or something.
Yeah, so it's not a huge difference, not half difference, it's
No.
half the number, okay.
Yeah. Should be around 430, we're at 375.
I got you, okay, so I did misunderstand.
okay. Any other comments, questions on that one? Okay. That should finish that one. We do have a couple of things. One of the things I would like to bring up, Rhonda. First off, did you want to say anything to us before I bring it up? Okay. Okay.
Change what she says to us, yeah.
One of the things that has come up, my fire department has come to me, and I don't know whether Bonnie, yeah.
I can't hear Rhonda at all. I wonder if she moved out so she's in front of the camera, in front of the mic a little bit. It might just pick her up a little. I'm really struggling with audio here, and I just thought that might help some.
Mike's over
Sorry.
So the issue I'd like to put on the table is my fire department has come to me and said that the province, and I don't have the data with me, but I just want to know if you guys are facing the same issue. My fire department has come to me as the mayor in the village of Macadam and have told me that provincial regulations have changed on the Scott air packs. And we are expected to buy new Scott air packs. Those Scott air packs are probably about, well, by the looks of my numbers here, about about $11,000 a piece. And I'm expected to buy 5 of those this year and another 4 next year. And certainly I did not budget for these because I had no idea that we were going to hit with this requirement. And so I wanted to bring that to the table to make sure that I'm correct for starters. And then number 2, to see what the other community or municipalities and communities are facing. Have they hit the same thing?
Yeah, we did too, and we had to go to the capital board to do that. And we're.
Okay.
Did you?
Oh, we're doing that.
I don't want to know.
Okay, so go ahead.
So did you contact, because we're contacting the government through, I'd have to speak with the CAO on it, on what fund or whatever it was. But we went, because our fire's not under our umbrella yet until January, but we're budgeting, I guess, for their budget, and that came up in it. And we've got them with us to approach government to say that we're not, you know, it's
I never brought this up with you because I'm trying to put you in a box here. Don't get that. I just really, what I wanted to do is bring it up so I get a feel from the other mayors. First off, are you being hit with this? Which we are.
Yeah.
The second thing is how we deal with it. So for me, it's an unexpected cost that's being driven by the province, public safety, I would suspect. And then so giving the small communities that sit around this board, the demand that provide our volunteer firefighters with a huge dollar number fix on Scott Air Packs. There should be some way that the province can help facilitate the purchase of those Scott Air Packs. I certainly don't mind spending the money. I will find the money, but that means other things within my community are going to suffer. But I will not send a fireman into a house that is potentially full of smoke without proper gear. And none of the mayors are going to want to do that. But neither should we have to be forced to go to the capital borrowing board to purchase that equipment for the safety of our firefighters. If the province is going to demand that we buy a certain specific type of Scott Air Pack, then the province should be willing to subsidize our communities for that. And that's how I would like to approach that from our RSC 10 board perspective. But I'd like to have your side of it as
This
well.
is very easy for me.
Yeah.
This is an office of fire marshal situation, so I will pass it on to the fire marshal's office.
Okay.
I'll send a message, get a note to him, and have a discussion and see how he wants to drive it or what,
Okay.
because it's fire related, so it's not my lane to be driving in. It needs to be driven by OFM.
Okay.
But I will see that they do get the memo, and if there's already any insight that they can provide.
Okay. There is a bit of urgency to this.
Yes.
Because the deadline for purchasing or having them in place is the beginning of next year. So,
As
and
in
they're,
January 1 or April 1.
I believe it's January 1. Is that
I
your?
believe so, yes.
I believe it's January 1.
I thought it was because we just discussed it with our fire because they just sent out a budget and that was in it.
Okay,
And we told them to budget themselves for it to come over with us. So I think it's
Okay.
January 1 that they're.
So is that because your packs are really old, like the newer ones, or is it a whole new?
Well,
They never mentioned me, but.
I believe it's every 5 years, there is a new iteration of Scott Air Pack that you're supposed to buy. I won't say this, in our community, it's been a little longer than that, but we never realized that there was, I don't even want to go there.
We upgrade stuff every year anyway, but that's what I was wondering, is some of them gonna be outdated from last year, or are they still gonna be good? That's what I'm,
No, some of our stuff is still gonna be good,
okay.
if we were allowed to use the older gear. Some of it is expiring, in the coming year.
I was wondering,
So-
maybe that's why you guys mentioned it, because maybe we're already good, I don't, I hope.
So there is a blend there, John.
I fully agree if the province wants to help. So, yeah, but we're moving ahead anyway, guys, because we still have to have it.
Yeah.
But it could also be something we bring up with Chris Austin, he's coming also. he's under public safety.
Yes.
Shows we end up with him.
The other part of the urgency on this is, there's a 3-month delay from the time that you order to the time that you receive it. So if we wait until the end of September, we may miss that deadline on January 1st. So this is something that has to be addressed within the next month. So that's why I have a sense of urgency on this one.
I know our marshal's out of the office for the rest of the week because I was in meetings with him earlier this week. I will see it's on his table for Monday morning.
Thank you very much, Rob. I appreciate it.
If I'm not mistaken, this comes about because of a new set of guidelines that's come in place, right? And it's simply, it was an updated 2015 or something, and decree about how long these things were serviceable. And it just came out recently.
Yeah.
So-
This would have been the last,
3 months,
maybe,
2 months?
yeah, I was gonna say 2 or 3 months. I got hit with this a little while back, and I don't know whether I brought it up at this board at one other meeting, but I think it was probably about a month ago. I tried to sensitize everybody to this, that it may be coming. But now it has come, and I'm sitting like my,
How did it come to you?
through my fire department, through my.
So the fire chiefs would know this?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it came to me, and I was sensitized to it about 3 months ago. Maybe it was 2, time blurs, but they were saying that we need to have new Scott air packs. And I said, well, tell me how much they cost. But we can't pull money out of nowhere. It's got to come from somewhere. And in my budget, when I look at my budget for new equipment, I have $20,000 for new equipment.
And that's one too.
And I just bought a new fire truck that I'm paying $50,000 a year for through the capital borrowing board. So all of a sudden I'm looking at that and I'm saying, well, I got $20,000 and the first slice of these new Scott air packs is going to cost me 55. So now I've got to go back into my budget somewhere and pull out 35,000, but I'm already halfway through the year. So it makes it more difficult to try and locate that.
We can also use the argument because of amalgamation, it's putting more pressure on us as well. You have to remember, we took over 3 extra fire departments since because of amalgamation. Those departments weren't keeping up. Now we got to pay the cost.
So this is questions just to help me out here. So you think you gotta buy 4, but how do you know what decides 4 for you? The other 4 are okay, just so to speak, say that's half.
You've only got so many people trained in, right? Maybe.
There's only so many that are trained to actually go into a building. A lot of the firefighters stay outside, but there are those that are trained to go in. But you also have the like I've got Scott air packs that may be fairly new. And I've got 4 main guys that have to go in. So I've got to have 4 kits, maybe 5, just in case I need to have that guy go in. I can hold on the other 3 or 4 until next year's budget. So I can order them November. They're not going to arrive until January, February. So I can pay for those ones out of the next year's budget. So I am taking a risk on that month, the 2-month period. It's pretty small risk that I'm going to put anybody in danger. I just won't have them go in. But the issue is I can't spend $100,000 on Scott air packs this year to meet that one January deadline. I just don't have the money within the budget unless I go to the capital borrowing board. And that's not an easy task either. You've got to sensitize them to the fact that you're going to want to borrow money. And then you have to all your financials together and provide that to the capital borrowing board. And they only meet once a month to make the decision on whether or not they're going to loan you the money. So now already I'm eating into the 2-month period. Now, after that 2-month period, I've only got 3 months left to get the order in. So I'm already behind the power curve. And we only learned about it about 2 months ago. So it's kind of put our municipalities in an awkward position where we have to try and jump the funding, go to the capital borrowing board, or some of us might have enough money to cover it all anyway. But I just wanted to make sure everybody understands. I'd like to have a reading from the fire marshal to see what his take on this is. I'd like to have this go to the, after we sensitize him to it, I'd like to go to the minister and say, look, this is a situation that's been foisted on us through no fault of our own. We're now being expected to spend an exorbitant amount of money on these Scott air packs before the 1st of January. Is there any way that public safety can help fund even 30–40%? That would be a big help to our communities.
I mean, I just kind of just checked mine, and like, he wasn't 100%, I probably didn't mention it right when I texted him, but he said that ours are the most current you can get right now, in my case, so.
Yes.
What that means, I don't know, I'm guessing that's good.
I thought these, yeah. Anyway, the way it came to me was their new guidelines that start on January 1st, and you have to be able to meet those guidelines.
So hopefully the most current ones meet them.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
So anyway, it's a good question to ask your firefighters, fire departments to make sure. And then we can bring a combined front if we need to.
And I can reach out to all the fire chiefs and ask them.
Yeah.
Okay, that'd be great too.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be fantastic. Thank you, Ron.
If you're consolidating it, just to save you a call, we have 9 new ones, but 5 of ours look like they need to be replaced.
5 of the 9 new ones.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that puts
Oh,
him-
5 of the 9 new ones? Geez, I missed that.
Yeah, we
Okay.
have 9. So apparently it's every couple of years this might happen. There's I think a time period, and every year we kind of phase them in. So apparently 9 are within the regulations, 5 will probably fall outside of it. And 1 is just a spare that we keep in a truck, I guess.
Okay. So if you could do that polling, I guess that'd be great. Thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
is there anything else? Yeah, Brad?
Yeah, I don't know if this is the appropriate table, but I kind of look at this table as strength of numbers, and I'm kind of wondering if all the municipalities are experiencing this. So I don't have to tell all of you, we finally have a real opportunity to grow, as we're seeing. People can work from anywhere and have jobs and live in our communities and run businesses, but our cell phone reception in the St. Andrews area has progressively gotten worse and worse, to the point where I have new people that have moved to the community. They're working from home. They are running off a cell phone. Internet's fine, but the cell phone is actually starting to make them question if this is a community they can live in. So it's such a huge gap. And I know that other levels of government are talking about accessibility with internet and everything like that. I think the 8 years I've been back in Charlotte County, it's deteriorated consistently since then. And I was wondering, how do we get a voice? Like, what's the best course forward? If I just call, Bell, Rogers, whatever, I don't have any tact. So it's not going to have any traction. I'm wondering if this isn't a bigger issue that we should be flagging to the provincial government and starting to get actions, because there's people that right now in my community can no longer work from home. And this is something that they're able to do just a couple of years ago.
It'd be federal.
Federal.
Well, I have a little bit of knowledge here, because I've been pushing for a cell tower at the landfill. There's this giant hole of service there, as you know, and there's a lot of accidents there along Moose Alley, and you cannot call anybody. And I've offered, we have property up there we're never going to use, and I've offered that and said, you can have this for free. You can't have it, but it would be like a low cost easement type arrangement. But apparently the provincial government will fund cell infrastructure in cases where there's no business case to be made by Bell or with Rogers. I have done that in the past, and this is what I've been pushing for, and I've been talking with our MLA about it for a couple of years. Mind you, it's not a fast process, but it's Department of Finance, and they will fund cell infrastructure in cases where it's deemed a safety issue or whatever, and there's no business case to be made to put one there. So that is a provincial thing.
Is my complaint shared across the whole region, or is this just a St. Andrews centric issue?
Oh, it's across the region.
Yeah, like areas that were perfect before, you can't even use it at. Yeah. So is there an action item? So like, I'll tell you, writing a letter and post on social media does get a reaction. So I don't know if kind of what the step is, because I don't know about you, but I find if I write a letter, it doesn't always get a response these days unless you make some noise around it.
I can tell you, if I go downstairs here, my phone will flip to US Cellular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In this building.
In the basement.
In
Because
the
mine did
basement.
last time we were for a meeting.
Right.
Well, even 2 bars sitting here is not really acceptable on this.
Deer Island's really bad, like even for emergencies for the ambulance, they get no service, so everything has to be done on their laptop and taken with them because there's no cell service.
Who at the provincial deals with the federal government on that issue? Do we have any idea?
Well, it is Department of Finance, and I do have contact. Someone, no, Minister of Finance. Sorry. But ultimately, it's somebody below him, obviously, a deputy or ADM, somewhere there in that department.
Why don't we, I like the idea. Sorry, Bonnie, go ahead. Yeah.
I can't remember from the cabinet shuffle federally this week, but did Minister LeBlanc keep intergovernmental affairs? Because I see he picked up public safety, and I wonder if it's worth having a conversation with him on a couple of issues. I mean, public safety, there's some obvious ones there around policing and some of those issues, but maybe if we can talk about the cell coverage as well, it might be like a 2-for-1 type of meeting or type of correspondence.
Okay. I think what we'll do, I'm right out on this one. I really have any direction because I hadn't even thought about it, Brad, before you brought it up. Give us a couple days to think about that one. We'll bring it back up at our working meeting, if you don't mind, and that way we'll have a better idea of what direction we should take on it. I just can't even think anything on that one other than I know we need it, but I don't know the difference between what does it mean to go through a business case scenario for developing that through from a public safety scenario. So there's a bunch of issues there that we're going to have to look at before we move forward. Al?
So can we as a board or manager, CEO direction to bring us some information to?
Yeah.
So that first meeting, like and you find out who we should be.
Yeah.
It's not, I still think it's federal when it comes to cell phone stuff.
Yeah.
So I do that is, then we can at least have that discussion.
Yes. Yeah. And then we can talk about how we set up a letter off to those and do that kind of thing. I can't believe the other RSC not facing the same issues.
Oh, they definitely are. In fact, this morning's meeting with the new Minister of ELG, they're making a big deal out of it because there's almost no cell reception in the entire region.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
So we can probably tap into the effort that they're putting forward and see who they're dealing with and try and figure out from there what Argent is.
So if it's that big, we should also maybe tap into UMMD.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Because they were looking for, I know in our local, oh my gosh, it's just slipped my mind. In our local group, they were looking for issues to bring forward at the next UMNB meeting in the fall. So maybe this is one of those items we can raise with Dan to bring that forward.
Dan and Wade.
Yeah, Wade is, I know Dan said he wasn't going to make the next cabinet meeting, I think it was, but Wade was going to be going. So maybe Wade could bring it up there. Okay, item, Brad, thank you for bringing that up. If there's nothing else in the open meeting, there is a couple of items that we would like to go through in the closed. So if there's nothing anybody wants to bring up, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the open portion.
Any questions from the public?
Oh, yeah. Is there any questions from the public?
Mr. Chair, there's no.
No. Then I guess I should tell you the next meeting is slated for August the 10th.
It's at 5:30 or 6 o'clock.
Let's shoot for 5:30.
5:30?
Yeah.
Call it summer hours.
Summer hours.
Yeah, no problem. We're no.
Okay,
Okay.
I haven't got one yet. But Jim, motion to adjourn. Thank you very much, everyone.
Good job.
And we'll take it off live. I have a couple of things I'd like to bring up.